I jolted awake, breath caught in my chest, because something felt off. My fingers brushed my pillow, and when I pulled my hand back, there was blood smeared across my skin. For a second, I thought I'd scratched myself in my sleep, maybe a hangnail or a mosquito bite. Then my hair shifted over my shoulders and the weight was wrong. Panic tightened around my throat like a rope. I ran my hands through my hair and felt it. Short, uneven, chopped into brutal tufts. My vision blurred as I stumbled out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood floor. I stared into the full-length mirror propped against the wall and recoiled. The girl looking back at me looked half wild, her eyes huge, rimmed with red, dark hair hacked off at jagged angles. My reflection looked like a mugshot from someone who'd survived a war. Sunlight was just starting to crawl across the room, catching in the silver of the scissors lying on my dresser, and beside them, a folded scrap of notepaper. I picked it up with trembling fingers. My mother's elegant handwriting leapt off the page. "Don't worry, you'll still look fine. Focus on Vanessa's big day." The words hit me like a slap. My knees nearly buckled. Madeline Cooper. 26. That's who I was, or who I thought I was. The girl who tried to carve out a life in Charleston, South Carolina, working at a digital media company, trying to build a name for myself on my own terms. But apparently, I'd been deluding myself. Because the truth stared me in the face. My mother and father, the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had drugged me and butchered my hair while I slept. All so my sister Vanessa's wedding could stay perfect. It wasn't entirely shocking. Not deep down. Vanessa had always been the blazing star in our family. 3 years older than me. Stunningly beautiful. Always with a talent to display violin recitals, theater leads, perfect report cards. Meanwhile, I'd been the footnote. The girl in the hand-me-downs, sitting silent in the audience, clapping for Vanessa under stage lights. I remember the first time I realized the truth. I was 13. Watching Vanessa open a gift box containing a Tiffany necklace. My mother whispered to me, "Vanessa needs pretty things. She's going to be seen." And that was the story of my life. Vanessa got Paris trips. I got shifts at the coffee shop to save for textbooks. 2 weeks ago, Vanessa announced she was marrying Brandon Walsh, a real estate agent with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. The wedding would be at the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina, an honest-to-God castle, dripping with chandeliers and rose gardens. My parents said it would be the event of the season. I was supposed to give a toast at the rehearsal dinner. My mother had even handed me a draft of my speech. All polite words about sisterhood and how Vanessa glowed like the sun. But now, standing there, shaking, blood drying on my scalp, hair falling in tufts around my bare shoulders, I understood how far they were willing to go. I stumbled into the hallway. The smell of coffee drifted out from the kitchen. My mother's voice floated toward me, humming some old hymn as though she hadn't just committed an act of quiet violence. I tried to steady my voice. "Mom, what the hell did you do to me?" She glanced up over her coffee cup. Her eyes swept over my hair but didn't linger. "Oh, Maddie, don't be so dramatic. It's just hair. It'll grow back. You were tossing and turning. You needed rest. And, well, you can't be distracting people this weekend. This is Vanessa's moment." Every word sank into my chest like a stone. I remembered the dozens of times I'd been told to let Vanessa shine. How many times my father had said, "Attention doesn't belong to you. Maddie, that's not your role." But standing there, fingers tangled in my ragged hair, my mother sipping coffee like this was normal, I felt something break inside me, because I finally knew the truth. They didn't just want to dim my light. They wanted me invisible. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I was willing to disappear. I felt like I was floating outside my own body as I stumbled into the kitchen. The morning light poured in through the windows, bright and cruel, making everything look too sharp, too real. My mother stood by the stove, calmly stirring her coffee. She looked up, her expression perfectly blank. "Good morning, Madeline." My voice scraped out of me, low and ragged. "Mom, why did you do this to me?" She let out a small sigh, as though I'd asked her why we were out of bread. "Sweetheart, you've been under so much strain. You needed help sleeping, and your hair, well, it'll grow back." My chest constricted like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs. "You drugged me." My voice rose so sharply that a few sparrows outside the window fluttered away. "You cut my hair off while I was unconscious." My mother's face hardened. "You're being melodramatic. It's just hair. Stop making this into a crisis." Behind me, I heard the crinkle of a newspaper. My father's voice floated over my shoulder, dry and dismissive. "Madeline, it's better this way. Less hair makes your face look less distracting." I spun to face him. Distracting from what? He didn't even bother lowering the paper. "From Vanessa. This is her time. We don't need you stealing focus." The words hit me like a slap. I felt my throat close, the tears starting to sting. So, all this was to make sure I didn't look prettier than Vanessa. My mother set her coffee cup down with a soft clink. "Maddie, Vanessa has waited her whole life for this wedding. Everything needs to be perfect. You've always had this need to stand out. Sometimes it's better for the family if you just keep things simple." My body felt like it was shaking apart. "You call this simple?" I lifted a handful of my butchered hair, holding it out like evidence. My father rustled his paper again. This is exactly the kind of dramatics we were trying to avoid. Something hot and bitter welled up in my chest, spilling into my voice. "You drugged me because you were afraid I'd look nice at my sister's wedding. You're sick." My mother's face darkened. "Don't speak to us that way. We've only ever tried to protect you. You've always been sensitive, overly emotional. You see attacks where there aren't any." A sob clawed its way up my throat. I backed away, clutching the back of a chair as if I needed it to stay upright. My father finally lowered his newspaper and fixed me with a cold stare. "Listen, Madeline. Not everything is about you. You should be grateful we're even including you in this wedding. Don't embarrass us. Grateful." That word stabbed straight into the softest parts of me. Because for as long as I could remember, gratitude was the currency I paid to exist in that house. I thought back to the countless times Vanessa had been praised for simply breathing, while I'd been told to stay quiet, not make waves, be grateful for what you have. Like the time I was 15, and $50 disappeared from Vanessa's violin case. She cried and pointed at me. I swore I hadn't touched it. My parents searched my room anyway. They found nothing. But my mother still said, "Just apologize." "Madeline, Vanessa doesn't need this kind of stress right now." I'd apologized. I'd always apologized. Until now. I felt something deep inside me shift, like tectonic plates grinding against each other. I looked at my parents, people I'd spent my life trying to please, and saw strangers. My mother reached for me, her fingertips brushing my arm. "Let's not ruin everything. Vanessa deserves a perfect day. You'll still look lovely in your dress. You can style your hair. It'll be fine." I jerked my arm away so hard she stumbled backward. "Don't touch me." My father's voice dropped an octave. "All ice. Madeline, you will give your toast at the rehearsal dinner. You will keep it positive. and you will not humiliate this family." My breath came in ragged gasps. Or what? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The unspoken threat hung there like a guillotine. I turned on shaking legs and fled into the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. I locked it and leaned against the wood, my chest heaving. In the mirror, a stranger stared back at me. Her eyes were wide and dark, hair jagged and uneven. A faint line of dried blood traced her hairline. I pressed my trembling fingers against the glass. Who the hell am I anymore? I remembered the note on my dresser. My mother's perfect handwriting. "Don't worry, you'll still look fine. Focus on Vanessa's big day." I felt something cold and sharp unfurl inside me. They didn't just want me quiet, they wanted me gone. And for the first time in my life, I realized I was done apologizing. My hands were still shaking as I stared at the pale, haunted girl in the mirror. My face was blotchy, my eyes red. Part of me wanted to curl up on the floor and stay there forever. But another part of me, the small, fierce spark buried under years of silence, started to burn. I wiped my face and grabbed my phone off the sink. I scrolled to Lauren's name. Lauren Mitchell had been my ride or die since sophomore year at College of Charleston. She'd seen me at my worst, at 3 a.m., ugly crying over guys who ghosted me, over grades I thought defined me, over a family who made me feel invisible. My thumb hovered over her contact photo. Then I hit call. She answered on the first ring. "Maddie, what's wrong? You sound like you're hyperventilating." My breath hitched. "Lauren, I need you. They cut off my hair. My parents. They drugged me. I woke up and it's all gone." Dead silence on the other end. Then a sharp, controlled fury. "Hold up. You're telling me your mother and father drugged you and cut your hair off." My voice cracked. "So I wouldn't distract from Vanessa's wedding. They left me a note." Lauren unleashed a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. "Those evil, controlling..." "Maddie, this is insane. Where are you? Are you safe?" I choked out. "I'm at home. I'm locked in the bathroom. I don't know what to do." Lauren's voice softened. "Babe, listen to me. You've got to get out of that house. Right now." I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. "Lauren, it's Vanessa's wedding. I can't leave. I'll look crazy. Everyone will think I'm just jealous." Lauren's voice dropped, hard as steel. "Screw what people think. Your parents drugged you. They physically violated you. That's not family drama. That's abuse." I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead. "Even if I leave, what am I supposed to do? No one will believe me." Lauren was silent for a second. Then her voice sharpened. "Wait. Didn't you used to record stuff for therapy, little voice memos, rants about your parents?" A memory flickered. Me, sitting in my room late at night, talking into my phone in a hushed voice, saving everything I was too afraid to say out loud. I sucked in a sharp breath. "Oh my God, I did. I have recordings." Lauren's voice turned urgent. "Find them, play them, let's see what we've got." My fingers fumbled as I scrolled through my voice memos app. Dozens of files, short clips, longer rants. My entire hidden life documented in my own words. I picked one and hit play. My mother's voice crackled out of the speaker. Sweet and lethal all at once. She always has to make everything about her. She thinks she's so special. Well, she's not. Then my father's voice, low and scornful. "Cut it while she's sleeping. She'll learn her place. Girls like her. They always need reminders." My mouth fell open. My own breathing echoed in the silent bathroom as I stared at the phone like it had just bitten me. Lauren exhaled sharply. "Jesus, Maddie, you have them on tape, admitting they planned this." I whispered, "I can't believe I caught it. I thought I was just venting for therapy. Lauren's voice was blazing now. Listen to me, this is your leverage. You don't have to stay quiet anymore. You have proof. I swallowed hard. But if I expose them, Vanessa's wedding will explode. Our family will be done. Everyone will hate me. Lauren's voice dropped to a near growl. Let them hate you. They've controlled your entire life with fear and guilt. This is your moment, Maddie. They don't get to keep rewriting the story. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking. I'm terrified. Lauren, I'm nobody. I can't stand up there and face all those people. Lauren's reply was immediate. Yes, you can. You're Madeline Cooper. And you've got a whole army behind you now, every person who's ever been told to shut up and sit down. You're not just doing this for you. You're doing it for all of us. My eyes burned with tears. I don't want to be the villain. Lauren's voice was gentle. Maddie, they already decided you were the villain the moment they drugged you. The only question now is, are you going to stay silent? Or are you going to make them answer for what they did? I stared at my reflection. The girl in the mirror looked different. Her hair was hacked and uneven, but her eyes, they burned with something fierce. Slowly, I nodded. I want to speak, but not the speech they wrote for me. I want to write my own words. Lauren's laugh was a short, sharp bark. Hell yes! Let's do it! Let's write the speech that'll bring the damn house down. I wiped my eyes and whispered, they're not going to see me coming. And for the first time since I'd woken up that morning, I felt powerful. I barely remembered driving over to Lauren's apartment. My mind was buzzing like a live wire, hands tight on the steering wheel as Charleston blurred past my windows. When I knocked on her door, Lauren opened it so fast I almost fell inside. She took one look at my face and pulled me into her arms. You're safe now, she murmured into my hair. You're safe. I let myself collapse against her for a moment. Then I pulled back, wiping tears off my cheeks. I look like a goddamn horror movie extra. Lauren stepped back, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. You look like a woman who's about to burn an entire legacy to the ground. And honestly, it's a good look. I tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Lauren, what the hell am I going to do? I can't show up like this. My hair, it's a disaster. Lauren's eyes lit up with determination. That's the first thing we're fixing. She practically shoved me into her tiny bathroom. The air smelled like eucalyptus and hairspray. She spun me around to face the mirror, then planted her hands on my shoulders. Listen to me. You are not a victim. You are a phoenix. We're going to cut away every piece of this mess they left you with. And then, you're going to walk into that wedding looking like a queen. My voice wobbled. What if I look ridiculous? Lauren snorted. Then we'll dye it hot pink and own it. But I promise, you won't. She draped a towel around my shoulders, grabbed a comb and scissors, and went to work. Snip by snip, the ugly remnants of the hacked hair fell away. Each lock that hit the floor felt like a piece of fear peeling off my skin. 20 minutes later, Lauren set down the scissors and blew out a long breath. Look, I blinked into the mirror. My hair was now a sleek bob, cut just below my jawline. The sharp angles framed my face, bringing out my cheekbones, making my eyes look huge and defiant. For the first time since I'd woken up bloody and half-bald, I almost recognized myself. Lauren grinned. Babe, you look like you're about to host a true crime podcast about how you took your family down. And it's perfect. A laugh escaped me. An actual, real laugh. Holy crap, I look powerful. Lauren squeezed my shoulders. Because you are. We moved to the living room, the energy between us shifting from panic to planning. Lauren pulled out her laptop, fingers flying over the keys. All right, she said. Let's talk about your speech. You're not reading anything your parents wrote. We're writing your story. Your words. No filters. I swallowed. What if I choke? What if I stand up there and forget everything? Lauren snapped her fingers. Then you look them dead in the eye and say, I was drugged and assaulted by the people who were supposed to love me. That's it. The truth is enough. My throat felt dry. I'm terrified. Good, Lauren shot back. Fear means you're alive. It means you're about to do something real. We spent hours hammering out every line. Lauren would read something aloud, and I'd cut in with, no, stronger, meaner, more honest. Sometimes I'd freeze and stare into space, remembering flashes of childhood moments, Vanessa's violin recitals, my mother fussing over her hair, my father's proud smile, and me, always on the sidelines. At one point, I buried my face in my hands. I don't want to destroy my sister's life. Lauren, I don't want to become this monster. Lauren set the laptop aside and sat down beside me. Maddie, your sister's life is built on a lie, and that lie is your silence. You're not the monster here. You're the one who survived. I lifted my head. My voice was barely above a whisper. I want to tell them everything. About the hair, the recordings, about feeling invisible my entire life. Lauren's eyes gleamed. Then tell them. Make them hear you. Make them remember you. That night, we left the apartment and drove to a boutique downtown. Lauren yanked me straight to the evening gown section. You're wearing red, she declared. Vanessa doesn't get to own that color anymore. I blinked at her. Vanessa always wears red. Exactly, Lauren said, rifling through hangers. Time for a hostile takeover. She pulled out a burgundy satin gown. It shimmered under the store lights like liquid courage. I stepped into the fitting room, my hands trembling as I pulled it over my shoulders. When I stepped out, Lauren let out a low whistle. Maddie, if the devil herself wanted to crash a wedding, that's what she'd wear. I stared at myself in the mirror. The dress hugged my waist, draped across my hips, the color bold and defiant. My newly cut hair looked even sharper against the deep red. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in my own skin. I turned to Lauren. I'm going to blow that entire room apart, aren't I? Lauren smirked. Baby, you're going to burn it to the ground. And deep in my chest, I knew she was right. The sun was barely beginning to sink behind the distant ridges of the Blue Ridge Mountains as I pulled up to the gates of the Biltmore estate. The place looked like a palace carved out of a fairy tale. Ivy crawled up stone towers, windows glowed warm gold, and the air smelled faintly of roses and old money. I sat in my car for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My burgundy satin dress shimmered in the rearview mirror, catching the last streaks of sunlight. My sleek new bob framed my face in sharp lines. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me, and for once, that was exactly how I wanted it. I stepped out, my heels crunching on the gravel. A valet gave me a polite nod, trying not to stare. All around me, guests streamed into the estate in a swirl of glittering dresses and tailored tuxedos. Inside, the rehearsal dinner was in full swing. Music floated through the vaulted ceilings, a string quartet playing something delicate and expensive. Candlelight flickered over crystal glasses and white linens. The smell of roasted garlic and truffle oil curled through the room. I stood just inside the doorway, scanning the crowd. I spotted Vanessa immediately. She looked radiant, draped in a white silk cocktail dress, her hair pinned up in an elaborate twist. People orbited around her like satellites, laughing, snapping selfies, cooing over her ring. Beside her, My parents looked like the royal couple of Charleston society. Evelyn, all pearls and posture. And David, with his graying hair slicked back and his arm wrapped tightly around my mother's waist. Vanessa turned and her eyes landed on me. She froze. For a split second. Her face slipped. Her lips parted in a small gasp as her eyes darted down to my dress, the deep red, the plunging neckline, the way it shimmered under the chandeliers. Then she took in my hair, my posture, the glint in my eyes, and just like that, I saw it fear. She smoothed her expression into something brittle and sweet. "Maddie, you made it." I smiled back, teeth sharp. "Of course I did. Wouldn't miss your big night." My mother approached me, voice soft and calculated. "Madeline, darling, that's quite the dress." My father's eyes flicked to my neckline, his jaw tightening. Not exactly subtle. "Is it?" I tilted my head. "Neither is drugging your daughter and cutting off her hair while she's asleep." My mother's hand shot out, gripping my wrist hard. "Not here," she hissed through her teeth. "This is not the time or place." I pulled my arm free. "Oh, I think it's exactly the time and place." A hush fell across the tables closest to us. People started glancing over, curiosity igniting like a spark in dry grass. Clara, the wedding planner, rushed up, clipboard clutched to her chest. "Madeline, we're just about to start the speeches. Are you ready?" I gave her a sweet smile. "More than ready." Clara guided me to the small stage at the front of the room. The quartet trailed off into silence. A microphone gleamed under the lights. Vanessa stood beside the stage, her smile flickering like a dying light bulb. She mouthed, "Don't you dare." I stepped up to the mic. My heart thundered so violently I thought it might crack my ribs. For a split second, I felt the urge to drop the whole plan, to run, to stay invisible, as I always had. Then I saw Lauren, standing at the back of the room. Her eyes locked with mine, blazing with pride and defiance. So I lifted my chin and spoke. "Hi, everyone. I know I'm supposed to say a few words about my sister and how perfect she is, but that's not the speech I'm giving tonight." A wave of confusion rolled through the room. Chairs creaked as people shifted forward. My mother's smile froze on her face. My father's eyes narrowed. I continued, voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. "I've spent my whole life being told to stay small, to stay quiet, so Vanessa could shine. But 2 nights ago, my parents drugged me, and while I slept, they cut my hair off, because they thought I'd be too much of a distraction at this wedding." Gasps burst like gunshots across the hall. Vanessa shrieked, "Maddie, stop it!" I kept going. They wanted me invisible, but I'm done being invisible. I pulled my phone from my dress and held it to the mic. I pressed play. My mother's voice spilled out, sweet and cold. "She thinks she's special. She needs to learn her place." Then my father's voice, chilling in its calmness. "Cut it while she's asleep. She'll remember who's in charge." A stunned silence wrapped the room. People stared at my parents, then at me, shock and disgust rippling through the crowd. Vanessa's voice was raw. "Maddie, please! You're ruining everything." I turned to face her. "No, Vanessa, I'm saving myself." My father surged forward, voice booming. "Enough of this nonsense." But I didn't back down. "No, I've been quiet long enough. You don't get to write my story anymore." All around the room, phones were lifted, people were filming, some were crying, a few were whispering, "Oh my God." Aunt Cheryl's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered onto a plate. I looked out over the sea of faces and felt tears sting my eyes, but not from fear. They taught me to be ashamed of existing. But I'm done living small so someone else can feel bigger. From now on, My story belongs to me. My father roared, "Security, get her out!" But even as two security guards stepped toward me, I held the mic and finished. They thought they could cut me down, but all they did was sharpen me, and as they gently led me off the stage, my mother was sobbing. My father was red-faced and screaming. Vanessa was frozen, shaking, mascara streaking down her cheeks. But me, I felt more powerful than I ever had in my entire life, because for once, the entire room saw me. The cool North Carolina night closed around me like a velvet curtain as security guided me outside the Biltmore estate. The heavy doors slammed shut behind me, muffling the chaos still echoing inside. I stood there, shaking, my breath pluming white in the crisp mountain air. For a second, I felt like I was dangling between worlds, the old life I'd just blown apart, and whatever the hell came next. Then my phone started vibrating in my clutch. I fumbled it out, my fingers still trembling, and saw Lauren's name lighting up the screen. "Maddie!" she yelled the moment I answered. "Maddie, you're going viral!" I blinked. Wait, what? She was practically shrieking. "A guest filmed your entire speech and uploaded it to TikTok. I'm looking at it right now. It's already at 3 million views in the first hour. People are losing their minds." I staggered a little, grabbing the railing for balance. Oh my God, Lauren was gasping for air. "Girl, it's everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. People are calling you a hero, like a straight-up warrior princess. Hashtags are trending. Invisible. No more is blowing up. Family is not always. Safe is right behind it." I clamped a hand over my mouth, dizzy. "They're on my side," Lauren shouted. "Hell yes, they're on your side. I've got women in my DMs saying they've never seen someone stand up like that. Even men are chiming in, saying they're rethinking their whole families. Maddie, you started a movement." A wild laugh bubbled out of me, half hysteria, half triumph. "Lauren, I thought they'd think I was crazy." Lauren's voice dropped to a soft, reverent whisper. "Maddie, people finally see you, and they believe you." My throat tightened. Tears spilled hot and silent down my cheeks as the cool air brushed my skin. By the time I drove back to Charleston, my phone was a landmine of notifications. Comments, tags, messages from total strangers. Every ding and buzz felt like an earthquake. When I got home, Lauren practically tackled me at the door. She pulled me into a hug, breathless. "I have a spreadsheet of interview requests." "A spreadsheet? Maddie," I blinked at her. "A spreadsheet?" "Yes," she shouted. "Good Morning America wants you." The Today Show. A producer from CNN literally left me a voicemail saying they'd fly you to New York tomorrow. BuzzFeed already published an article about your speech. The headline is, "This is how you reclaim your power." I sank onto the couch, my brain spinning. This can't be real. Lauren's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, eyes widening. Holy crap. Netflix just emailed. They want to talk about a docu-series. Working title, Invisible Daughters. My jaw dropped. Netflix? No way. Lauren shoved the phone at me. "Read it yourself. They said your story is an anthem for a generation. Maddie, this is history." I pressed my palms to my temples, overwhelmed. I'm just me. Lauren gave me a withering look. "You're Madeline Cooper, the woman who torched the lie her family was living. That's who you are." The following days blurred into a whirlwind. Every news outlet seemed to want a piece of me. Bloggers dissected every word I'd said, talking about toxic family dynamics, the weaponization of silence, and how many women would finally feel seen. Even celebrities reposted my clip, adding captions like, This is why we speak up. One night, my phone lit up with a private message from a blue check account. I almost didn't believe. Brandon, Vanessa's fiancé? Hey, Maddie, I saw your video. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was that bad. I've left Vanessa. I can't stay part of that family. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. Weirdly, I didn't feel vindicated or happy. I just felt done. A chapter closing. A few days later, Lauren bounced into my apartment waving her phone. Guess who wants to talk to you? I groaned. Another news anchor. Lauren shook her head. Nope. Cynthia Ray, CEO of Evolve Collective. She wants to meet you. She said she wants you as creative director for a campaign called Unseen No More. She says you're the perfect face for women reclaiming their power. My mouth fell open. Creative director Lauren. I'm not a freaking executive. I'm me. Lauren jabbed me in the shoulder. Exactly. And you is why the entire world is listening. Don't you dare hide now. I hesitated. What if they just want me as a sob story, a marketing ploy? Lauren's eyes burned. Then you walk in there and make sure they don't. You're not just a survivor. Maddie, you're a storyteller. You've got power now. Use it. The thought lodged itself in my chest like a hot coal. So the next day, I wrote back to Cynthia Ray. Thank you. I'd love to meet. Because even though I was terrified, even though my life felt like it had been picked up and shaken like a snow globe, I realized something. I'd rather live in this chaos than go back to being invisible. The new office smelled like fresh paint and expensive coffee beans. Sunlight streamed through huge windows, throwing golden streaks across polished concrete floors. People buzzed around with cameras, laptops, color swatches, and vision boards. Evolve Collective had set me up in a loft space downtown, right on King Street, Charleston's beating heart. Outside, cars rumbled past, music drifted from nearby bars, and the salty breeze rolled in from the harbor. I stood there, soaking it all in. The high ceilings, the modern art on the walls, the neon sign above the front desk that glowed, Unseen No More. This was my new world, and it felt like stepping into a life I hadn't even dared to imagine. On the morning of our launch party, Lauren was everywhere, her phone glued to her ear, barking out instructions and greeting guests. Bloggers, local news anchors, influencers. They all came streaming in, eager to see the woman who'd stood up to her family and sparked a nationwide conversation. I'd just finished answering questions for a local reporter when I turned around and felt my entire body freeze. Because there they were, my parents. Evelyn and David Cooper stood near the doorway, hesitating like they weren't sure if they were allowed to step inside. My mother wore enormous sunglasses, even though we were indoors. My father looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders rounded, his hair more gray than silver now. A hush fell over the room as people began whispering. Phones subtly lifted, recording, just in case the woman who'd exploded her own family might explode again. My mother slowly removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were puffy and red. Madeline, we wanted to come to see you. My father cleared his throat. You've done quite a thing. Maddie, the whole world's talking about you. I blinked at them, feeling like a glass wall stood between us. Yes, they are. My mother took a step closer. We're proud of you. A laugh barked out of my chest before I could stop it. Proud you haven't been proud of me since I won a middle school spelling bee. My father flinched. Maddie, families fight. People make mistakes. But we're still your family. I stared at him. Are you sorry? He hesitated. My mother reached for his hand but said nothing. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. My father's voice was a low rumble. Your sister. She's been a mess. Vanessa wants to talk to you. Does she? I asked softly. Because last time I saw her, she was screaming that I'd ruined everything. My mother's eyes glistened. She's different now. A ripple of movement passed through the crowd as Vanessa appeared behind them, hanging back by the doorway. She looked like a ghost of herself. No designer gown, no diamonds, just a simple black dress. Hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were swollen, as if she hadn't slept in weeks. She cleared her throat. "Maddie!" A hush fell again. Vanessa's voice broke as she said, "I don't know how to make this right. I spent my whole life trying to be perfect, and the only way I knew how was to keep you small. I thought, if people looked at me, they wouldn't see my cracks. I'm sorry." I sucked in a shaky breath. Vanessa took another step forward. "I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to untangle all the crap Mom and Dad planted in my head. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know. I see you now." I blinked fast, my throat tight. "I see you too." Vanessa's eyes filled. "I miss you. I miss who I thought you were." I said honestly. Vanessa nodded, swallowing hard. "That's fair." My mother opened her mouth as if to speak, but I lifted a hand. "Stop. I'm not ready for you to talk yet. I'm not ready to hear excuses." My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 10 seconds. The entire room was silent. Even Lauren stood off to the side, watching, her eyes damp. I lifted my voice so everyone could hear. "I'm not here today because I wanted to destroy my family. I'm here because the truth was killing me. Because silence protects only the people who cause harm. I will never apologize for telling the truth." Someone in the back clapped. A few others joined in, and suddenly the room was filled with applause. I glanced at Vanessa, whose face crumpled. She whispered, "I'm glad you told the truth, even if it broke everything." I nodded. Sometimes, breaking things is the only way to build something better. My mother took off her sunglasses again, blinking rapidly. She whispered, We don't know how to fix this." I exhaled. "Neither do I. But I know this. I'm not going back to being invisible. Not ever." My parents stood there, awkward and small, as the crowd began to move again, conversations starting up around us. Vanessa gave me one last watery smile before she slipped back through the doorway and disappeared into the crowd. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the room I was standing in truly belonged to me. The party eventually died down, people trickling out into the Charleston night, their laughter echoing off brick walls and cobblestone streets. I lingered in the loft alone, the neon sign above the reception desk humming softly, "Unseen no more." I stood by the window, staring at the city lights sparkling like a scattered constellation. Music drifted from a bar down the street. A warm breeze carried the faint scent of salt and magnolias. For years, I'd lived convinced that invisibility was safety, that if I stayed quiet, kept my head down, shrank myself small enough, no one could hurt me. But silence doesn't keep you safe. It just makes it easier for other people to erase you. I pressed my fingertips to the glass, feeling the cool pain beneath my skin. My reflection looked back at me, short hair sleek and fierce, eyes bright and alert. The woman in the glass looked nothing like the girl who used to stand in the shadows, swallowing her own voice. I thought about my parents, about Vanessa, about all the years I'd begged for scraps of affection, twisting myself into shapes that never fit, hoping one day they'd see me. And suddenly, I felt light, because I realized something I wished I'd known sooner. No one gets to decide how small I should be. I turned away from the window and let out a shaky laugh. I remembered standing in that ballroom, microphone in my hand, my voice trembling as I told a room full of strangers the truth that had been rotting inside me for years. I'd been terrified, but afterward, I'd felt unstoppable. Because once you speak your truth out loud, it can't control you anymore. And here's what I've learned. You're allowed to exist without apologizing. You're allowed to take up space. You don't have to keep secrets to keep the peace. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes family is the friend who sits beside you at 2 a.m., helping you write the speech that will change your life. Sometimes family is the stranger online who whispers, "Me too." The people who truly love you don't dim your light. They stand beside you so you both shine brighter. As I stood in my studio that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Lauren popped up, filled with heart emojis and exclamation points. I smiled. Outside, the world kept spinning. Cars zipped past. Laughter echoed. A new day was waiting. I whispered into the empty room, "My story belongs to me now." Because I finally understood that power isn't something other people give you. It's the moment you stop letting anyone else tell you who you're allowed to be. And no one, no matter how sharp their scissors, can ever cut that away from me again.